After more than 20 years in production, Bentley recently announced that their somewhat iconic W12 12-cylinder engine is going to be discontinued, with production ending in April of next year. Now, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but I have never driven anything from the Volkswagen Group with that iconic W12 engine in it. It's something that more or less was a staple of the Bentley brand and drew people in, and also made it into a couple other products, namely the Volkswagen Phaeton and the Audi A8. And I hadn't driven any of them, so I reached out to my new friends at Bentley, told them my little story, and said, hey, I would love to experience this before we can't really get a hold of them anymore. So this is Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and this is the 2023 Bentley Bentayga Speed with that iconic W12 engine under the hood. We'll talk all about what this Bentayga is kind of overall, talk a little bit about the W12 engine, what makes it so interesting, because this is a W, not a V. You heard that correctly. And then, of course, we'll get on the road and talk about how this Bentayga Speed is to drive and how that W12 is as a partner. All right, so let's talk about what makes a Bentayga first of all. So, long time ago at this point, Bentley decided they needed an SUV in their lineup because, you know, everyone was kind of going that way and they didn't have one. So this is what they came up with. Now, this is not the first iteration of Bentayga from a styling standpoint, but they've all been on the same platform since the car was conceived. This came out in 2015, 2016, got a facelift somewhat recently, but the bones are all fairly similar over the years, and the engine options are as well. So, platform-wise, Bentley is part of the VW group of brands. So that includes Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, and Lamborghini, among some others. And what that means is this is on the MLB Evo platform, which is the long SUV platform that is shared with a lot of different makes and models. That includes the Audi Q7 and Q8, the Porsche Cayenne, this, of course, and the Lamborghini Urus. If we got the Volkswagen Touareg here in its current form, that would also be on MLB Evo. Now, platform sharing is not inherently a bad thing. A lot of brands do it across every size and price point and everything, and it makes a lot of vehicles happen where they otherwise couldn't. So, don't think of this as just an Audi Q7 with more leather everywhere, but it does kind of sort of use an Audi Q7 as like its starting point. So, that is just kind of what this is as a vehicle, but there's a lot of Bentley-ness going on here, and the big thing is that W12 engine, which is, of course, like I said, going away. So let's talk about the W12 in particular, because it is very interesting, at least to me. So from a technical standpoint, the W12 has its roots in the Volkswagen VR6 engine, which you would have found in like your sorority sister's Jetta 20 plus years ago. I'm sure Bentley is like seething that I just said that, but the VR6 came to life. And it is not a V6. Like a V6 would be, you know, a typical V layout, and you have 3 cylinders and 3 cylinders, and they have 2 different cylinder heads. And Volkswagen needed an engine at the time, way, way long ago at this point, that was more compact than that. So what they did is they got clever, and they took 3 cylinders and 3 cylinders and kind of made them almost like an inline 6, but a little offset. So you've got this kind of funny looking series of cylinders that kind of go like in a weird zigzag pattern. But what that means is you've got a V-ish 6 that shares 1 cylinder head among both banks. So that's the VR6. Now let's go to like 25 years ago when the VW group decided, hey, we need a new engine for our flagship vehicles, i.e. all the Bentleys and ultimately the Audi A8 and the Volkswagen Phaeton. Well, they decided to take what they had in-house and get even more creative, which I actually love. So what they did is they took a VR6, which has 3 cylinders and 3 cylinders, kind of in a weird little funny shape, and then they took a second one, which has 3 cylinders and 3 cylinders in a funny shape, and they effectively welded them together with one common crankshaft. And what that means is this thing is a very short engine front to back, and it's also a very wide engine left to right, because you've basically got 4 cylinder banks. They're kind of splayed out because you've got a VR6, and they're like splayed out a 72-degree angle with one crankshaft. So that is basically what they did to get this W12. And in this case, it makes 626 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. So it's a very cool engine. The VR6 is known for having kind of a different sound, a unique sound, and we'll talk about how this sounds. You'll get some sound clips here in just a second, but very, very cool to me. And it's also nice because it helps with packaging. So because, like I said, it's not super long front to back, you can get creative with how you shape the vehicle, how you shape the hood. You know, if you think of like a typical inline 6-cylinder engine, like from an older BMW, for example, or even a new BMW, really, they have to have a very long hood because that inline 6 is so long front to back, versus this case, this thing is no deeper really than a typical like V6. So very interesting for how it's all packaged in size, makes plenty of torque and horsepower. And in this case, it's got 2 turbochargers strapped to it as well. So we're all good in the power and torque department. Now, getting that all to the ground is an 8-speed ZF torque converter automatic, which is typical for everybody at this point, and standard all-wheel drive. As far as the rest of the Bentayga is concerned, you've got standard 4-corner air suspension going on, so it'll raise and lower as you need it to. This one has the optional adaptive dampers, so they can be stiffer or looser based on your preferences for drive mode. This one has the standard brakes. These are regular steel brakes. They're about 15.7-inch rotors in the front and 15-inch rotors in the back. Plenty of brake, but you can get carbon ceramics if you really want them. And otherwise, we've got a few other options going on because everything on a Bentley is an option. So this one has the black line package, which gives you blacked out trim instead of all the chrome and satin stuff going on. You've got the black wheels, and then you've got the styling specification, which gives you carbon fiber down the sides, a little carbon fiber wing going on at the back, and all of that adds up to quite a lot of money, and we're not even done yet. We've got the touring specification, which gives you the 4-seat package basically in the back seat. So you lose some practicality, you gain a center console with 2 captain's chairs that recline and massage and all sorts of stuff. There's a wall between the back seat and the cargo area, and a leather-lined cargo cover. That in itself is over $11,000 to just make this less practical, which I just love. It's very of the type of vehicle, I guess, is what I'm getting at. But that's kind of what they've got going on. And then, of course, the famed, sort of at this point, the other iconic Bentley bit, other than W12, is their sound system. It's the NIME for Bentley sound system. And that is a 1,720 watt system with 20 speakers in this Bentayga. So on paper, very nice vehicle overall, but we're here mostly to talk about the W12. Before we do, I do want to mention the MSRP of this thing, because this has an entire Toyota Supra's worth of options as far as price is concerned. So this isn't a league of vehicle that I cannot conceive of affording, but for the people who can, I don't think people really care about spending another 11 grand when the base price is over 200 in the first place. So this one has about $57,000, $58,000 of options on it, and the total MSRP of this Bentayga Speed is $324,500. It's a lot of money, but it's a Bentley. You can get it painted in one of like 100 colors. You can get the interior done up in every which way. You can get pink leather, yellow leather, green leather, whatever you want, contrasting stitching, quilted stitching, speed embroidered in the headrests, you know, whatever you want, they will do it. So there's a lot of appeal here, and that is really what you're paying for on top of all the other mechanical and driving sort of experiences. So with all that, let's get behind the wheel of this Bentayga Speed and talk all about how that W12 is to drive, because they're not going to do it for much longer. Alrighty. So let's talk about driving this 2023 Bentley Bentayga Speed. So the Speed is the only way to get the W12 in the Bentayga at this point. You can't spec any of the other trim levels. So the Speed is going to be kind of the big straight line cruiser, like the high-speed straight line cruiser of the whole Bentayga lineup. They've got the other models like the Bentayga S that are similarly sporty, but can be equipped with other performance-y options. I guess they can all have the different performance options, but point being, like the Bentayga S would be a twin-turbo 4-liter V8, and that's going to be lighter than the W12. So this one is kind of heavy. This is like 5,500 pounds. So with that in mind, this is meant to be more of a straight line car, I think, than some of the others, just given the weight. But in theory, it can dance given everything else going on. So there are a bunch of drive modes here. I'm going to put this in sport because this does have the optional sport exhaust on the car. So it's a valved exhaust, and it will open up the flaps, and you can hear it. It gets a little bit louder. So then, we are going to be good to go. Now, when you are just driving this and cruising, if you really listen for it when you lift throttle in, you know, first or second gear, It does have a little bit of kind of this rumble and a little bit of burble, but there's no excessive snap, crackle, pop. That wouldn't be, you know, becoming of a vehicle like this, but there is a little bit of exhaust kind of noise that's really fun. I don't know if you can hear it on the camera or not, but it's really neat just because it gives the car a little bit more character, but only in that sport mode. We're in comfort or the Bentley mode, which is kind of the normal drive mode. That is just pretty quiet and pretty normal. So then, it's interesting, I've picked this filming location and it's really terrible because if any of you have watched my Audi RS6 Avant video, it's the same conundrum I'm facing right now in that I have to merge, but there's no merge lane, which means you have to get up to speed very quickly. And thankfully, I think we have 12 cylinders and 2 turbochargers that can help us with that. Now I'm not gonna bother with like a launch control or anything like that. I'm really just gonna put my foot down. There's a lot going on here. A lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, a lot of sounds. So we got to talk about all that. So I'm gonna put this in manual mode because I like hearing everything. It's such an interesting sound. So first of all, the sound, when you're hard on it, it is such a fascinating noise to me because it's not what I would expect from a V12. It is a little more angry. It's a little more raw, perhaps. But the whole experience, the NVH of it, especially but the whole experience of it is still a very refined experience. There's no roughness or harshness going on. And even now, there's just power everywhere. It pulls nice and strong all the way to the red line, which is indicated around 6,200. It doesn't rev super duper high. It's not like a screamer, but it pulls nice and hard. And you just kind of roll into it. And it just hauls the mail. This will do a 3.8 second 0 to 60 run according to Bentley, which I fully believe. And Bentley also claims that this has a top speed of 190 miles an hour, which I find hysterical. But I do think it would do it. I really do think it would. The gear changes, even in sport mode, in the automatic sport setting, they're not DSG, DCT quick. There is a little bit of a pause. And also off the line, there's a teeny bit of turbo lag, which I think adds some character, and I really don't mind it one bit. Because on the flip side, yes, you lose out on a teeny bit of that super low end, but it pulls nice and strong, like I said, all the way to that indicated red line. Now, the other interesting thing about this whole acceleration experience, like I said, 4-corner air suspension, more for self-leveling and ride control than anything, and then adaptive dampers. We're in the full sport mode. Regardless, when you put your foot down in this car, the entire nose, it just picks up and rocks back like a speedboat. It is hysterical. I'll do this again, and I'm gonna put this back in its sport automatic mode here. Hit it. It is so hysterical. It just, the whole thing just rocks back. It makes all that good sound, and it just flies. And it will do it. You get the sense it'll do it all the way to that indicated, they say, 190 mile an hour top speed. I have ventured nowhere near that, but it's such a cool engine. I love, honestly, the fact that it's not a V12. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just, it's a VR6, it's a Volkswagen thing. But yeah, it gives it some character. It's a little interesting. It's a little different versus what they could have done. They certainly could have built a V12 way back when, and instead they did this. And I think it's really fantastic in kind of this weird, goofy way, and it gives the car some character. And we love character. So, engine-wise, fantastic, weird, good weird, my kind of weird, love it. I'm sorry to see it go. They're getting rid of it because corporate average fuel economy and emission standards are, ever tightening, ever more stringent, and honestly, you're feeding 12 cylinders. There's no real way to make this efficient. And straight highway cruising, I did a long road trip in this. 15 was the best I could do. And like driving around Washington, DC, like 7. So only so much you're gonna do. And where Bentley is going is more electrification, not full EV. Electrification, the cation part, means hybrids basically. So You're eventually going to only be able to get a Bentley as a hybrid, but I think they're still going to do like a hybrid V8 and a hybrid V6 or whatever. So it will still be interesting and not just another, you know, EV. I think they will go that way eventually, but right now they're going to do a big mix of everything. But unfortunately, after over 20 years, that W12 has to unfortunately go away. Now, we've got a few more minutes, so let's talk about the rest of this thing as far as how it rides and all that. The ride in this car is fantastic. The suspension is supremely comfortable in its most comfort-oriented setting. So you've got basically Sport, Normal, which is the Bentley logo, and then Comfort, which is a little soft. Great body control, great ride comfort. It is a very, very cushy, comfy car, but not in a bad way. It doesn't heave over stuff. It doesn't, you know, wander all over the place. It's really well done. So that is fantastic. The steering is very good. It's kind of what I've come to expect from other MLB Evo vehicles, and this kind of applies to the chassis otherwise too, but you know, certain stuff will be more sport oriented versus comfort, but the steering in all of them seems to be very, very good for a largish SUV. So it's a generally nice place to be, and on a back road in sport mode, it will really hustle. It's comfortable being hustled, which is really, really nice. Now, on that road trip, I did have 3 of us in the car, so we all got a chance to kind of take this in over the course of many hours and form a lot of opinions. And on the drive home today, before I started filming this, we kind of talked through our collective thoughts. And these are 2 good friends of mine. They're also car people. So interesting to get their take on this as well. And they've gotten to ride in a lot of other fun stuff I've had that's kind of luxury oriented like this as well. There's a lot to like in here. There's an experience that's been crafted for you with this interior. It feels unique versus what you're going to get with any sort of more mainstream brand. And keep in mind, this is my first time driving a Bentley, so I know other Bentleys will also kind of provide that vibe. That is not a Bentayga specific sort of experience, but it is a very nice place to spend time. I think the seats are very comfortable. One of my friends was like less of a fan, but they adjust every which way. The driving position is great for tall people, so that is also, you know, a nice thing. That's kind of a German thing, and granted, Bentley's not German, but Volkswagen Group, MLB Evo, etc. The car is friendly for tall people, so that is fantastic. I also love the fact that they've retained real knobs and buttons and everything for the climate control and your volume and all that, and it's a single infotainment screen, not the Audi 2-screen nonsense that I don't think is helpful for anybody. And then you've got digital gauge cluster, which I don't think is used super well. You can have the virtual cockpit sort of thing going on where it'll show a map. It doesn't do it with Apple CarPlay, so I kind of don't care. I would prefer these to be real gauges, especially at this price point. They could do it. So, you know, we're at the point where like real gauges are more art than anything, but I love the analog. I wish they would do it here. But everything's going to screens, so, you know, whatever. One thing to mention in here, though, that I do want to bring up, like I said, this uses an Audi Q7 as kind of a base. There are bits of Audi sprinkled throughout here in places that I just don't love. For this kind of price point, I am just surprised that there is plastic anywhere to be touched. It is nice plastic, but I'm just surprised about that. And granted, this is my first Bentley experience, but I'm just a little surprised by that. Certain things, like this entire sunroof control panel, sunroof and overhead lighting, that's like straight out of the Q7. The steering wheel controls, Audi. The turn signal and wiper stalks, Audi. They have zhuzhed them up. You know, there's metal scroll wheels and metal end caps for the different buttons and things, but I'm really noticing this because I came out of an Audi RS6 Avant. So I was in a very nice, expensive Audi, and I'm just noticing where some things feel a little more Audi than I think they should, given the price point of this thing. And even when you take all the options off, this still starts in the $200,000 range. And, you know, I just wish there was a little more done to differentiate the two. And it feels very strange saying that because I'm driving a very expensive car that costs as much as the house I grew up in. But it's just something that I noticed, and we all noticed it. But overall, very, very good, very lovely car. I love the fact that you can get it in a billion different paint colors, a billion different interiors. Like, it's so fantastic. If you're gonna buy one of these, please don't buy it in black. Please, really, I'm begging you. And don't do like black on red with, you know, red interior. Like, do something weird and creative, because every other brand you can't do it. But the point of this video is to talk about the W12 engine. I hope we covered that enough, because I really, I so love the fact that the W12 is here. I love that it is weird. I love that it is so powerful and such a neat, cool experience. It's not the ripping silk sensation of an inline six. It's very, very different than that. It's not the burbly, throaty V8. It's a sound all its own. It's a feeling all its own. And I just love the character that it imparts into the Bentayga. So I'm curious to see how they will change things up, especially when they drop the W12. They are running them through April of 2024, and then that is it for this motor. All right, that is it for this review of the 2023 Bentley Bentayga Speed and taking a look at its W12 12-cylinder engine. As always, thank you so much for coming along. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe right here on YouTube. Give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Out Motorsports. We so appreciate that support. The more of it we have, the more fun stuff we can do with really cool, interesting cars like this Bentayga. So totally appreciate everything y'all have done so far. Would love to get even more support. So tell all your friends, tell all your family, tell people you don't even like. We'd love to have them follow us and watch the videos anyway. Other than that, you can give us a follow at outmotorsports.com. We have a lovely community of people who would love to be your new best friends if you are looking for some LGBT automotive enthusiast community. We would love to meet you online. We've got some events coming up both online and in person through the rest of this year and already into 2024. And all of that can be found on our website, outmotorsports.com. Until next time, please stay safe, be well. See you for the next one.